Alrighty then, here we go again. Another ride, another conversation, another good time. Hope you guys had a better day than I did. Mine was not particularly good, but I mean, they can't all be good, but I do feel like here recently I've been having more bad days than not, which isn't a ratio that most people want to keep up. It's kind of unfortunate. So I'm trying to figure out ways to turn that around. And it's easy to blame one or two things about it, but I've always said perspective is a very powerful tool, and I believe that when I say it too, and that I just really need to keep my perspective positive, and eventually everything else will kind of sort itself out. But just the amount of days where things go horrendously things go horrendously wrong seems to be steadily increasing, and just dealing with that is the exhaustions that come with it is just it's a lot, and trying to figure out how to sort your way through it can be a dark, deep, seedy mess, but it is something that can be sorted through and should be sorted through. We shouldn't just wallow in our own awfulness and just be like, well, this is the reality I exist in. I feel like we as people, especially in these big modern societies, have a far less choice than we feel like we do, and we do not have as much choice as we should in fact have, but we don't have as little choice as we feel that we do, if that makes sense. I feel like I explained that in a equally confusing and clear way, but at any rate, we feel as though we don't have much choice in the matter of the things that we're stuck in and the things that we do, when we do have choice. But I don't want to sit here and advocate that we have as much choice as I feel like we should. And that, like, yes, for the most part, if you're trying to exist in this modern world, in this modern society, you need a job. Like, there's no real way around that. But, like, that doesn't mean that you have to have a dead-end job that you despise and hate and want to never experience anything with it ever again. But to the same end, you have to give a little to get a little. Like, you can't just have this dead-end job and never give it anything and expect it to get something out of that. But to the same end, like, you've got to know what's good for you and what is not. And I certainly do not feel like where I am is in a bad place, or that what I'm doing is bad for me, but I do recognize the fact that I'm having more bad days than I feel I should. And so with that consideration, I then have to figure out, what am I going to do to fix that? Like, I know that the job is part of the bad days, but it's not fair to put the sole entire blame on the job. So what can I do from the percentage that I can control to make it better than what it is? And going back to outlook, I was talking about outlook, but just constantly and always keeping that positive outlook. There is so many worse situations than I could be in than where I am now, and like some of which I've actually been in. And so it's important to keep your perspective in mind and like see how far you've come and understand where you are. Like, my very first job working at Subway, I was making like $8.25 an hour, and I thought that was just the greatest thing on the planet. And I can remember that same year the Xbox One came out, and it had a price tag of $500, and that was a big deal for me. That was a big purchase. And so like I had to save up multiple paychecks to be able to afford the Xbox One, and I was super proud of myself at the time. And I took like 3 days off the day that it launched. I stayed home, played video games, chatted with my friends, did the whole bit. It was a good time. But then like as time progresses, I've moved past those milestones. I've moved past those markers, and I've hit bigger markers and hit bigger milestones. And like, I remember the first job, like the first full-time job I got immediately after Subway, I was making like $9 an hour, and I thought that was hot stuff. And like, I remember the place was, it's a I won't say the name of the place, but it's like a imaging place, and they hire on in the springtime month, or not the springtime, in the fall time months, to gear up for the holidays, because they have tons of people taking pictures and needing photography work done for the holidays. So they hire on a bunch of temp hires through the holidays, and they tell them, hey, it was a super awful and very competitive environment, because they would tell their temp hires, hey, if you outperform our current full-timers, then we will hire you instead of the full-timers. And that did not lead to a very good work environment, as you can imagine. None of the full-timers wanted to show the part-timers what to do, because none of the full-timers wanted to be replaced. And so as a part-timer, you had to kind of find your own way in this whole menagerie of things and hope to kind of scuttle through it or whatever. And I just remember, because there was so much overtime, and I got paid weekly there, and I can remember just thinking that that was like the greatest job ever. Here I was working 16 hours Monday through Friday and 12 hours on weekends, and I thought this job was the bee's knees. Like, I could not have a better job, because I get all this overtime, and I'm making good money, and I'm getting paid weekly. It feels great. But like, what a foolish, ignorant child I was at the time, and that the job was terrible. I was getting paid terrible money, and like, it only felt like it was good money because I was being overworked and working like tons of hours. Like, that's not an ideal job situation at all, nor is it healthy, nor is it a lot of things. But like, to make matters worse, they had this terrible competitive environment where everybody was at each other's throats because nobody wanted to be outperformed, and they would very publicly post people's numbers on like a scoreboard, so to speak. And they only had 10 full-time hires that they kept throughout rotation all year round, and they had 12 part-time, or yeah, they would hire on 12 part-timers to get them through the rush. And so the end of the year comes around, they're through their Christmas time rush, it's New Year's, and they're doing their bit, and like, the scoreboard has me very clearly ranked at rank 7, and some other part-timer who was hired around the same time as me ranked at rank 8. And so I thought I was in a good place. I was like, I'm set. Like, I am 3 ranks below the lowest performing hot full-time person. Well, no, joke was on me in that they still let me go, despite having been promised that if I could outperform one of their full-timers, I would get the job instead of the full-timer. But no, that wasn't the case. They didn't live up to that promise. And so I was left out in the cold, had to find a job, and eventually landed full-time at Home Depot, which is another story for another time. But recalling these stories and going back to these lesser worse times helps to keep your mind in perspective with the here and now. And like, I'm working a job that I am getting paid very generously for, and I can accept that, and I can appreciate that, and give all the warm fuzzies that I can towards that. But it's also like, it's a stable job. I'm not being asked too much. Like, there's a lot going on right now, but that's because I inherited a mess, and I'm trying to clean this mess up. But like, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I can see the goal that we're moving towards, and I can see that eventually, when this mess is cleaned up and we all have a very clear idea of what the heck's going on here, we can be in a very nice place. And I need to keep that perspective going. Bad days are going to happen no matter what you're doing. Even when I reach that perfect place where everything's wonderful and everything's moving, you got your clockwork going, even when I get to that place, there will still be bad days. And to understand that and to recognize that, like, they will be few and far between. And that is the goal. You want to have as few bad days as humanly possible, obviously. And that is absolutely achievable. I just need to keep my outlook straight and keep plugging away and keep knocking things out until eventually you get unburied out of this hole and you can see the sky again and you know that it's going to be good. And I think that's an important lesson and an important conversation to have, not just with me, but with anybody who's in those kind of situations where they feel like they're in a bad place. And sometimes the answer is as simple as leaving. If you're in a bad place and you've done all you can do and your mindset is set and you are just, this is bad, it's not good, then leave. Like that is absolutely a valid option. Do not feel any sort of weird obligation to stay in a toxic, awful thing longer than you need to, because there's no need for that. Life is too dang short to be miserable for even a large percentage of it. Even if you're miserable for 20% of your life, like that's not good. Like, if we say the average life expectancy of a person's 100 years, and obviously that's a little steep, but it makes the math easier, that means like you could stand to be miserable for ages 0 to 20 before you start finally being happy, and that's not acceptable. And so like we need to realize, like, and it all comes back to happiness. I keep saying that, but like the pursuit thereof. And it's cheesy because what is it, the Declaration of Independence that say that we all have the right to the pursuit of happiness, which is a bit of a joke because it is a dang hard thing to pursue. And like sometimes I feel like happiness is like purposefully elusive, because like you can acquire all these things that you thought you've wanted all along. Like, I've always wanted the good job, I've always wanted the solid car, I've always wanted the this, I've always wanted the that. But then when you get the this or the that or whatever it is you're looking for, there's always something behind it that, okay, well now what about this, and now what about that? And it comes back around to the Rolling Stones songs, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. And it really kind of is like, you know, this song is more true than I care to admit, because I am a very goal-oriented person, and I continually set goals for myself, and I continually strive for better and bigger and better things. And as I do so, I tend to wonder, like, at what point in time does this train stop? Or does it ever stop? Or do I just keep plowing through goals until I'm too old to plow anymore? And is that the destiny that I've set forth for myself? Is that a destiny that's exclusive to me? Is that something that other people experience? Like, and I feel like to a degree they do. And it's an odd dichotomy to be caught in, because like right now the goal is to gain a following, to be popular with my books, and to get people recognizing my writing for what it is and appreciating it and all that good stuff. But like, what happens when I get there? When I finally step up on that part of the mountain, then what? Like, I know I am not a fool, and I know how my mind works. I know there's going to be something else. And like, to that same end, where does the satisfaction come from? And I think the satisfaction ultimately comes from your ability to look back and be like, thank God I'm not where I once was, and I am now where I am. And I feel like that is the truest thing that we gain from hindsight 2020. You know, they always say, and it goes both ways. It absolutely goes both ways, because hindsight can come and bite you in the butt and be like, oh, if I'd invested in Google when I was a baby back in 1998, then I could be rich right now. Like, hindsight's dumb in that way, but it can also be a wonderful tool to look back at how far you have come. And I think that's the way that the tool really should be used. And you can look back and be like, dang, like, once upon a time I was here, now I'm here, and like, wow, this isn't so bad, or wow, this is pretty dang impressive, or wow, this is wonderful, or whatever this is. Like, look back and use that tool to appreciate where you are, and don't spend so much time in the past. I always like the phrase, and I feel like I came up with it myself. Maybe I heard it from somewhere, but I really think this is mine. But it's like, the past is a good place to visit. Just be careful not to stay for too long. A lot of people get hung up in the past and the way things were and the way things they feel like should be, and like time marches on and it's not going to stop. Regardless of how much you want it to or how you pretend that it will not stop. And so what you can either do is you can march along with it, or you can get left behind in its dust and not really know where you are. You just be lost in a giant dust cloud of the past and the way things were, and never understand the way things are. And I feel like that is a very, another dangerous thing with hindsight and looking back. And like I said, it's a great tool when used properly, but just know when to move on and when to let things go. And there's always a point in time where that's healthy, and there's always a point in time where it's not. And it goes both ways, just like anything else. But I feel like that can be a powerful tool and a meaningful way to get past those slumps where you feel like you're just, I'm in this dreadful place and I cannot get out of it. And like, if hindsight's not working for you and you can't figure out, like, you can't find a place in the past where you were doing worse and you're like, hey, at least I'm not there, then look into the future. Like, if hindsight isn't cutting the mustard, then make a better future now so that you can look back a couple years from now at your new hindsight and be like, daggum, look what I did. And that is another powerful way to get through these slumps of just bad days after bad days after bad days, and just trying to make it through the grind, and what a grind it is, and like also appreciating like the today, because like you don't want to pass all of your happiness on to tomorrow, because if tomorrow is another bad day and tomorrow is another bad day and you just never have a tomorrow that isn't a bad day, then you just never have happiness. And you've got to find happiness in the here and now, and that is just an absolute healthy way to go about conducting yourself. And so just an odd conversation that sprung up from wanting to understand the bad days that I've been having and how to get over them, how to get past them. And with any luck, maybe I helped you navigate your own journey of self-improvement. That sounds incredibly pretentious to say that, and I don't mean to come across that way, but like, I don't even know really how else you would put it. Like, what is the point of these conversations? Why do we all stick around and listen to them, if anyone even really is? And I'm not just talking into the void at this point, and if I am, then I am. But to that end, like, understand the tools that you have at your disposal to make your experiences better, and use those tools to make your experiences better. And it's as simple as that. Like, you had a bad day today, yuck, that happens. But at least you're not where you were 7 years ago, or at least you're not where you were 5 years ago. Or, you know what, I had a bad day today, but I'm gonna make tomorrow better. And use those tools to control your mindset and keep your mindset in the positive, because the second you let your mindset dip into that negative value, you start losing bits and pieces of yourself, bits and pieces of your life, bits and pieces of things that should be precious to you. And like, the negativity's just gotta go. Like, life is too dang short to be miserable for any percentage of that time. Like, I don't even want to be able to say that 1% of my life was miserable. Now, I'd be fooling you to say that 1% was not miserable, but like, if we strive for that, then we strive for something unachievable, but what we achieve is also unachievable. Because if you're trying to achieve something that can't be achieved, then what you will achieve is something that you never fathomed you could. And that is something truly special in my mind. And as we pull pull into my driveway at this point, I think I will leave you on that, because I don't know that I ever intended to come up with something quite that profound. So I hope that this has been productive and good, and I will see you all again. We'll do it again, whatever day it is you're watching this. I hope it's a good one, and that it continues to be good, productive, and amazing. Thank you all for your time.